All right, I'm just leaving my tax person, trying to file all my taxes. I have like 1,000 W-2s and 1099s and all this stuff because this is the year that I transferred from doing regular work full-time and working a couple jobs to doing YouTube, as well as some like random freelance stuff that I got 1099 for. So yeah, a lot of crap for me to deal with. I'm not the kind of person who's good with that kind of stuff. I'm definitely I'm quite the procrastinator. But anyways, I wanted to just talk about, I thought it'd be kind of interesting to talk about mental health, being that I would argue that I'm sort of on the cusp of having a little bit of an understanding of it. So my quote unquote, I guess, mental disorder would be classified as like anxiety mental disorder. But for me, like the symptoms wasn't like, I'm not a particularly anxious person. I do have a little bit of anger issues sometimes, and I'm relatively calm. I definitely enjoy my life. I'm not very stressed out. I really like where everything is. And I have for the past, a long time. In fact, I would argue that a lot of my life, I've been somewhere around where I thought I needed to be, or at the very least, I had convinced myself that I was where I needed to be. But regardless, starting a couple years ago, I started getting chronic panic attacks. Now, to put that in perspective, maybe you've had a panic attack. Basically, I get convinced that I am dying, like legitimately convinced that I'm dying, and it doesn't matter how logical I'm being about it. Like, I can be fully aware of the fact that it is just a panic attack. Like, if there was some sort of radar that could read panic attacks, and I was looking at it and it was saying, you are only having a panic attack, I could still read that and be like, yeah, no, but I'm dying though. Because it kind of overrides all your logic. Like, I will be thinking in the background of, holy crap, I'm about to die. I'll be thinking, this is just a panic attack. Like, it's fine. You're going to be okay. But it doesn't matter. Like, my body goes into this fight or flight mode. And it's almost like my subconscious takes the forefront and my, like, regular conscience becomes my subconscious. And I can hear myself yelling in the background, like, it's fine. Like, this is just your body going through fight or flight. But then, the much louder voice is like, oh, no, this is how you die. Like, enjoy, this is it. And it sucks. It was definitely very debilitating, but one thing that it taught me is how out of control a lot of these things can actually be, especially with things like depression, because I feel like depression is a sort of, I don't know how to explain it. Like, it has this feeling that people use it as an excuse a lot to, like, get out of certain things. There's definitely been times where even I was like, I knew someone and they were like, yeah, like I'm like, I have like depression and like blah, 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 blah. And I couldn't really see any of the symptoms on the surface. But it wasn't really until I started having my own issues that I could actually comprehend possibly what they were going through, or maybe even have an understanding of why I'm not seeing the symptoms or what I would expect depression to actually look like. Because I've been sad before. When my brother passed away, I was really sad. I've had really dark times in my life, but never was I depressed in the sense of there wasn't this like overwhelming darkness that I couldn't get over that seemingly came out of nowhere, or sometimes doesn't have a cause, or it is not a response to anything, much like my panic attacks. With my panic attacks, it wasn't I would get stressed out at work and have a panic attack. It was more like I'd be daydreaming, having the time of my life, and the next thing I know, you're dying. And I imagine some people have those experiences with things like depression where everything's fine. They're just like having a normal day. And then all of a sudden this daunting cloud of darkness comes over them. And it's just like, oh, fuck, I'm bummed. Like, I'm depressed and I don't know how to get out of this. But my hope is that if someone sees this and doesn't have like an actual understanding of some of these mental disorders, or they think it's a lot of people crying wolf, which could possibly be some people are crying wolf. Don't let that discredit a lot of people who are actually dealing with something that is actually out of their control. I know that with this next generation, there's definitely a lot more, I guess, quote unquote, claims of mental illness. But I don't know, who am I to say that it's just way more apparent in this next generation. It certainly is easy to jump to the conclusion that everyone's using it as a scapegoat to get out of stuff, but I'm not going to judge everyone that way. I'm not going to be like, oh, like you're just faking it. Especially since like me having so much trouble explaining to people around me the severity of it. Like, I was spending the night in the hospital. Like, once I would sleep in the hospital parking lot like 3 nights a week to 4 nights a week, because sometimes the fear of possibly having a panic attack would bring on a panic attack. And it was just like exhausting. Like, I would shake uncontrollably. Just a super shit experience. But starting the process to like deal with it, the process to kind of get past it was it was awkward. It was hard to move around it because I was very unfamiliar with that world. I ended up, I would go to the hospital and be like, hey, like blah, 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 blah. And a lot of times they would almost brush it off as a panic attack. Like, hey, I think I'm dying. And they'd just be like, oh, well, you're just having a panic attack, without offering any explanation of what I could do. Or, I think a lot of times they just automatically assumed that it was because I was stressed out or something like that. But that wasn't the case. I was getting them just literally out of nowhere. So I literally had to seek out a psychiatrist to figure out what was going on. And then they gave me some background of okay, is it like this and this? Are these your symptoms? Blah, blah, blah. And then I ended up getting sent to another doctor who knew more about that side of things, I guess the more mental side of health. And they ended up putting me on Zoloft. Before I got on Zoloft, though, I did, a ton of research on the side effects of medicines, because I've definitely been a person who tries to avoid medicine, not because I don't believe in it, not because I'm an Eastern medicine kind of person, but just because I would rather not put stuff in my body that I feel like my body knows best a lot of times. But this, of course, when it comes to the big stuff, obviously I'm gonna jump right on the Western medicine train. But I don't, I'm not gonna take Advil or something like that. I do take melatonin to sleep a lot, though. That's a pretty crap habit that I should probably kick. But anyways, wasn't thrilled about the idea of having to take medicine to, I guess, make my brain behave. But in all honesty, it ended up being the greatest experience of my life. The side effects for the first, I guess it was 3 weeks, were kind of all over the place. There was no change in my personality or anything, or at least not that I noticed. But definitely appetite was definitely different, and it absolutely massacred my sex drive for a while. What's kind of cool though now is my sex drive is definitely lower than it used to be. But honestly, I think I had too much of a sex drive, so it kind of works out. I feel now I just have a normal one. But all in all, for the first time in way longer than I had realized, I got to actually feel like myself. I didn't really notice how deep into this overthinking things and almost becoming not one of those people who think, what's it called when you think that there's something wrong with you all the time? It's a disease where you're convinced that there's always something wrong with you. But I actually do have an actual heart condition, so that definitely didn't help the situation. It's oh, I got this heart condition and my heart's acting all crazy, so I'm gonna die. That's definitely a terrible combination. But regardless, being on Zoloft, it definitely has helped me so much on dealing with it. And now I still do get panic attacks from time to time, but it's nowhere near as exhausting or daunting. So I honestly think that if you are having any sort of issues, or you're unsure if you have whatever the mental disorder is, whether it's schizophrenia or I don't know, I'm not the guy to be able to name a bunch of mental disorders. Chronic panic attacks, that's the one I know, or anxiety disorder, or depression or whatever. Definitely just go see someone about it, even if it's you're not even fully sure that that's the case, because I waited way too long. I was way too unsure. I was just oh, maybe this is has something to do with my heart condition, or my diet, which I changed actually it was really good for me. I changed my diet, I quit smoking, I did a lot of things to get healthier, and when none of that helped at all, that's when I finally pulled the trigger. But that was months, close to a year, that I absolutely wasted on not getting the proper help that I needed. And if you're on the fence about going and getting help, it is so good to just go get it handled. Because me personally, when it comes to psychiatry or a shrink or whatever, I'm not necessarily one that thinks these people know everything, because every person's so different and unique, and every body is different and unique. But sometimes it just helps to hear someone else's opinion and talk to people who've dealt with people who have your same situation, and they can tell you what maybe they've learned from their other patients that they've had that has what you have, which was kind of my case. And it was definitely, I don't want to say calming as much as gave me a little bit more hope. Not that I was super down about it, but more so oh shit, I might actually get to the other side of this, because it definitely felt like it was going to be forever. And yeah, I know that normally I'm a little bit less serious, but this is a subject that I think about a good bit. I've been on both sides of the fence too, someone who didn't really not that I didn't really believe in mental disorder, but I definitely felt that it was easier to pick up whether someone actually had it or not. I don't know, some stupid arrogance like that. So yeah, if you're dealing with anyone who's having these issues, help them get help, or maybe this helps you understand kind of where they're coming from. Probably not, though. It's mostly a rant as I walk through a neighborhood. But regardless, I filmed it and I put it online, and you watched it to this point, which is fucking crazy. So yeah, thanks for making it this far.